Hello, everyone. Hi. Good morning. My name is Ani Pomo Ribicki. I am the director and resident teacher of Songtsen Gampo Buddhist Center in a suburb of Cleveland called Lakewood. Right now, like everyone else, pretty much we're doing everything online. So sign up for the newsletter. It's below. Also, if you don't have the closing prayers, then the link for the closing prayers is below. And we're starting to do another prayer a teacher gave us to help with the pandemic. It's called a prayer to Shawari. And the prayer itself is there, and also the mantra is there, because the mantra that is on the prayers is very hard to read, but we're going to fix that later. Anyway, so welcome this morning. So we are going to speak today about the 6 paramitas. This is the last in the series that we started some time ago. So we'll be talking about that. The book that we'll be using is below. Also, it's called Words of My Perfect Teacher. That is what I'm basing this Dharma talk on this morning. Sorry. Quotes that I say and things like that are from that text. Okay. All right. So before we start, as always, as we always do in Buddhist path, we want to establish what's called our bodhicitta motivation. So bodhicitta is a Sanskrit word. Bodhi means awakened or enlightened, and citta means the mind-heart. So what does that mean, enlightened or awakened mind-heart? It means the wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So seeing the suffering of others, we, out of compassion, have this strong wish to remove their suffering. We really don't want them to suffer. And that is mixed with the wisdom that understands the cause of suffering, which is fundamental ignorance, which then leads us to create the negative karma that causes us to suffer all throughout samsara, or cyclic existence. So with that in mind, if you could please make that your motivation for the time we're going to be spending together this morning as best you can. If, Buddhism is not your thing, that's fine. If you could just at least wish that the time we spent together benefits not only you, but others as well. Okay. Okay, just need to turn up my volume here. Then we want to take a moment to consider our precious teachers, Tugu Pema Wangel Rinpoche, Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche, and Taklu Matra Rinpoche are all the spiritual directors for our center. Without them, and not only them, but all the enlightened beings on earth today are here to benefit us, are here to help us to attain freedom once and for all, freedom from ignorance, freedom from suffering. And so we think of them with a tremendous amount of gratitude, because without them, we could not do that on our own. And also respect, because for their realization, understanding that their realization is vast, and having some humility ourselves in the face of that. All right. So normally we discuss and then meditate. Today I want to reverse that. I want to begin with meditation so that we can kind of calm our minds and kind of become more aware before we go into the discussion on the 6 paramita. Okay? So the meditation, there we go. The meditation that we are going to do today, pardon me. Okay, the meditation that we're going to do today is, I don't know really what it's called. I call it alternating meditation. So what we're alternating between is concentrating on the breath or focusing on the breath and resting the mind. And the reason I'm doing this one today is because that is one of the practices of realizing the nature of mind, is resting the mind. So what I mean by resting the mind is we just let the mind in its natural state. Normally the mind is in motion, right? We're running here and there and we're thinking about that and past and future and fantasy and blah, 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 right? So we just want to just stop messing around with it, right? Stop sticking our fingers in there and just stirring up the mud, okay? Just let it be. If we let it be, the mud will naturally settle. If you think about like a typical example given is a glass of muddy water, what we're normally doing is stirring, and that mud, the water can't become clear like that, right? So what we want to do with resting the mind is just let that mud settle by being still, okay? When we do mindfulness of breathing meditation, that's about concentration. That's about awareness and, one-pointed focus. Okay, so those are different. So we're going to switch between kind of really focusing the mind like that and resting the mind in openness. Focusing the mind, resting the mind in openness. And the advantage of going back and forth between these two is that both of those meditations remain fresh. Okay, some of you may know already from trying to do meditation that the mind can become quite dull. We can fall into a kind of half sleep. We can get like that, kind of bored, right? So this meditation is like boom, boom, boom. It's fresh. It's not that quick, but alternating. Okay, so this particular meditation, where your hands are, what your mouth is doing, and what your eyes are doing are all involved. So we need to pay attention to that. Okay. So for the mindfulness of breathing practice, we want our hands like this in our lap, which is the meditation mudra. Okay. So I'm going to go through that just for the mindfulness. Okay. Hands like this. The mouth is closed but relaxed, breathing through the nose, and eyes looking slightly downward. So if you look straight ahead and then you just lower your eyes a little bit, like halfway, that's a good posture for your eyes. Okay. So that one, we're sitting like that. Okay. Mouth closed, breathing through the nose. Pardon me, eyes open, slightly downward. For the resting the mind meditation, your hands should be palms down on your legs, depending on how long, right? Your knees or your thighs, okay? Just palms down like that. Breathing through the mouth, okay? So the nostril has two entrances, I guess, and the mouth is just one. So why we breathe through the mouth in this meditation is its non-duality, okay? So we're breathing through the mouth, and then the eyes are slightly upward. So we just, again, same thing as before, just the opposite direction. So look straight ahead and then slightly raise your eyes up. And it's just this unfocused gaze, you breathing through the mouth and resting the mind, okay? Be careful with this one that you don't do that, all right? A lot of people do that because you think look up and you just naturally kind of put your head back. Don't do that, okay? So you just want eyes straight ahead. Just your eyes look up. Your chin should still, okay? So when we go between those two, to signify to you that we're going from one to the other, I'm just gonna do that. Or maybe I don't like to have to bend over. So let's do this. Oh. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Okay. I'm just gonna ring this bell a little. Like that. Then you switch. Then you switch. Okay? All right. So let's start that. Excuse me. Okay. So we are going to begin with mindfulness of breathing practice. So I described to you the hands, the breathing, and the eyes, and what you're doing with your mind, right? But now I just want to give you general posture for meditation. So if you're in a chair, you want your feet flat on the floor. If you're on the floor, you just want to put your legs in a cross-legged position, okay? Whatever way is comfortable for you. And the rest of the instructions are the same. So your hand should be in whatever position that we're doing for this alternating meditation. Your back needs to be straight. This is the main thing, okay? So it doesn't, not like that, like tense, okay? Just straight, yeah? The shoulders should be back also. So what I like to do is just roll my shoulders back one time, and it just naturally kind of straightens you up and sort of opens up your lungs a little bit. Okay, back of your neck should also be straight. So your chin is going to be, as they say, tucked in, but it's not like down, okay? It's just, you see the difference between here and here and here. You want to be here, okay? And the rest are according to what I said. So let's begin with mindfulness of breathing practice. I will ring the gong for the beginning and the end of the practice. In between, I'll use the bell. Okay, you ready? So remember, focusing on the breath, your hands like that, mouth closed, breathing through the nose, eyes slightly downward, focusing the mind, trying to keep the awareness of the breath continuously, okay? All right, here we go. Resting the mind, palms down on your knees, breathing through your mouth, eyes looking slightly upward. Just let your mind be, okay? Focusing on the breath, meditation mudra, breathing through the nose, eyes slightly downward. Maintain awareness of the breath. Resting the mind, palms down, breathe through the mouth, eyes slightly upward, Just let the mind be. Mindfulness of breath. Resting the mind. Okay. All right. So if you have any questions about that meditation or about anything that is said today, write it down or remember it. After, we'll have some time for question and answer. Okay. All right. So there we go. All right. So as I said, we are talking about the last of the 6 transcendent perfections or paramitas. So just to remind you, they are generosity, discipline, which is really like moral discipline, patience, diligence, which is actually joyful effort, concentration, and wisdom. So I've had videos on all of those already. So if you're interested in those, please have a look at those videos. They typically start at the beginning, and then at the end we do meditation. So, okay. So wisdom is the key to everything. All right. The previous 6 paramitas or transcendent perfections do not become transcendent unless and until they are paired with the 6 paramitas, which the 6th paramita, which is wisdom. Okay. So again, to remind you, I'm taking all these quotes and information from the words of my perfect teacher. So if you want to read more about that, please feel free. All right. So transcendent wisdom has 3 aspects. First, the wisdom that comes through hearing. Second, the wisdom that comes through reflection. And third, the wisdom that comes through meditation. So the wisdom that comes through hearing is, quote, this means listening to all the words and meaning of the Dharma spoken by a spiritual teacher and understanding the meaning of those words, unquote. So very simple, just learning about the teachings, okay? Either through oral or written teachings, so through books, texts, things like that also, so quite simple. So the wisdom that comes through reflection is to, quote, reviewing the teachings in your mind and clearly establishing the meaning through reflection, examination, and analysis, and asking questions about what you do not understand, unquote. So this here, personally, this is one of my all-time favorite things about the Buddhist path, which is that we are meant to and encouraged to ask questions and contemplate the teachings, as opposed to being allowed to do that, or maybe it's tolerated, or maybe we're not allowed to ask questions at all, which does happen, right? So in Buddhism, blind faith is considered a fault. Just swallow everything whole, right? But blind skepticism is also considered a fault, all right? So what I mean by that is, you know, especially in the West these days, like to be skeptical is kind of chic, right? You know, if you just refuse to believe anything that you cannot see or experience with your five senses, that's blind skepticism, all right? Blind skepticism is what leads people to believe that the earth is flat, right? Doesn't really lead to a good result, okay? So we don't want blind faith. We don't want the other end of the spectrum either, just blind skepticism, all right? We're supposed to ponder the teachings, see if they make sense, and also to see if we truly understand them, right? If we don't understand them, we should ask questions until we do, all right? Keep asking. Ask one person, look in a text, ask a lama, ask another lama. You know, I've done this my whole life in the Dharma. Just ask and ask and ask and ask, because I really wanted to understand, okay? All right, so let's see, what's the next point? All right, quote, you should make absolutely sure that when the time comes to practice, you will be able to manage on your own without needing to ask anyone to clarify certain points, unquote. All right. So we should know what we're trying to do when we practice. We should know why. We should know how. We should know what. All right. And not just listen to the teachings or read the teachings in a very vague way and then kind of feel, I more or less have the point. No, we should be certain. Okay. So as Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche said, I don't know if it was, I think it was last year in the teachings in France, he said, you know, be an active participant in your practice with your mind. Okay. Now the rest is me. Okay. Take it in your own hands, right? And don't expect the teacher or the text to magically make you understand or you know, make you practice properly, right? We have to, you know, not be our own teacher. I mean, that's another subject, but we have to be the kind of student who actively wants to learn something, who really tries to put the teachings into practice and is not satisfied with just hearing them or kind of generally knowing about them. We want to be able to practice them, and we want to be able to progress on the path. So the example I like to give for that is, you know, when people try to learn, some people, I didn't do it this way, but some people, when they try to learn another language, when they're learning another language, they put up a bunch of sticky notes around the house, you know, for the whatever Spanish word for stove, the Spanish word for brushing your teeth, the Spanish word for television. You know, they might just do that to kind of remind themselves, right? Instead of just going to class, not taking any notes, kind of having a general idea, not ever trying to speak Spanish, you know, And then 20 years down the line going, well, how come I haven't made any progress in Spanish? Okay. People do that with the Dharma. I've seen it with my own eyes. Well, I've been receiving teachings for 20 years. And this actually happened in Nepal with under Chogyampa Rinpoche in Bodhanath. There was a guy there who asked that question. Oh, I've been studying for so long. And I've been hanging around the lamas for a really long time, but I just haven't seemed to progress in my I just don't, progress. And Chogyampa said, well, are you practicing? And the guy said, no. So, of course we're not going to progress unless we practice. So be active in your own progress on the path, in your own learning. Okay. All right. So now we get to the juicy part. The wisdom that comes through meditation. Quote, through meditation, as you gain practical experience of what you have understood intellectually, and then they say some more. So that's the point of meditation, right? It's just what I said, like we don't just keep it in our head. It's something that we experience through doing the meditation that is associated with that teaching, with the practice that is associated with that teaching, right? So that's the difference, okay? Quote, having first eliminated all your doubts through hearing and reflection, which we just talked about, you come to the practical experience of meditation and see everything as empty forms without any substantiality, unquote. Okay, emptiness, right? This is one of the most, let's say, advanced, challenging things to put into practice. It doesn't mean we can't do it. It just means that it's not as easy to understand as, let's say, something like impermanence. So we should definitely, really dive into the teachings on emptiness so that we can understand what it is that we're aiming for, and at the same time, try to do the practice. We shouldn't wait until we understand everything possible about emptiness, because we'll really, we could spend our whole lives doing that, which actually they refer to later in this text, okay? So we need to try, study, try, study, try. Do the meditation, do your best to do the meditation. Nobody can, especially with this one, nobody can really describe the experience to us, okay? And the reason for that is because emptiness, or this particular meditation, the experience one has is beyond concept. So all language involves concept. As soon as you're using words, you're putting something in a box, okay? And this is really without boundaries. So that's why, we just have to try ourselves. And then once we hear enough teachings, and then once we reflect on that enough, once we meditate on that enough, there will come a time where we understand that's it, and then we lose it. Especially in the beginning, we tend to lose it as soon as we say that's it, right? Because we're throwing a concept on it, and then zoop, it goes. Okay, but that's fine. And just keep trying, and eventually it will work. What was I going to say about that? Oh, right. So this is one of the really special and wonderful and important things that happens when we're in the presence of a great master, like Dalai Lama or our teachers or, other masters, is that through the power of their realization, they can give us a taste, in our own mind, give us a taste of what that experience is, right? So that's really cool. It's really very interesting. And it's something that you can notice in their presence. And through that experience, you have a taste of what the nature of mind is. Okay? All right. So, in regards to this idea of seeing everything as empty forms without substantiality, they give 8 similes of illusion. All right, I'm not going to go through all 8, but I will mention 3 of them. So one of them is everything is like a dream. All right. Quote, all the external objects perceived with the 5 senses are not there, but appear through delusion, unquote. So that's a pretty big, that's kind of a shocking idea, isn't it? Excuse me. But here's a good example. Consider when you dream, all right? Your body's on the bed, but in the dream, you're moving about, you're interacting with others, etc. None of that, what happens in the dream, has any true existence in reality, right? As soon as you wake up, you realize everything that you totally believed in the dream, no matter how strange you thought, oh, this is happening to me. When you wake up, you realize, oh, all that was mind-made. That's not something that really happened. Sometimes you're sad about that because you had a really nice dream. Sometimes you're happy about that because you had a stressful dream and you're like, phew, that didn't really happen. Okay. So what they're saying here is that our world is the same. Let's put it this way, the world that we perceive is the same. So currently, because of our ignorance, because of our obscurations, we do not perceive the world as it really is. All right. What we perceive is our own projections. So that's a whole big subject, which we're not going to go into today, because all of these teachings on the 6 paramitas are really just like brief overviews. Okay. To really study it takes a lot more time than what we have, right? All right, the second example is from the text, like a mirage. Everything is like a mirage. Things appear but are not real. So, we all know those stories of a mirage, right? When people are in the desert and they think they see in the distance an oasis, and then they get there and it's nothing, okay? I'm sure probably all of us have experienced that sort of heat shimmer on a really hot day. And it looks like there's some kind of, shimmering thing in the road or in the distance. And then we get there and there's nothing, right? So it's the same, a kind of mirage, optical illusion. Okay? Then, as in a reflection, things appear but have no reality of their own. Okay? So if you think about a reflection, the reflection of the moon in water, for example, it looks like the moon, it looks just like the moon, but it's not the moon, it's just a reflection, okay? In the same way, when we look in the mirror, like let's say that we put on glasses, okay? When we look in the mirror, the image we see is someone wearing glasses, ourselves wearing glasses. The mirror image, right, the image of us in a mirror is not the one who can take off the glasses. It looks like us, but it's not us. It looks physical, but it's not physical. Okay, only we can do that ourselves. So reflection, it's just a reflection. I love all this stuff. It's so interesting. So again, from the book, seeing all the objects of your perception in this way, you come to understand that all these appearances are false by their very nature. When you look into the nature of the subject that perceives them, the mind, those objects that appear to it do not stop appearing, but the concepts that take them as having any true existence subside. To leave the mind in the realization of the nature of reality, empty yet clear like the sky, is transcendent wisdom, unquote. All right, so let's unpack this, okay? So seeing all the objects of your perception in this way, being like a reflection, like a mirage, like a dream, all the things we talked about before, you come to understand that all these appearances are false by their very nature. So what does that mean? Okay, so we're not saying actually that nothing exists, okay? What we're saying here is that things do not exist in the way that we perceive them. All right. So that can sound like, oh, it's so esoteric. Oh, it's such a big high philosophy. Okay, we can see it like that, right? But it's really not that. It's not magic. Okay. It's just that we don't see things as they appear. We can see that things don't appear to us as they are in reality. All right. So if you take a table, which is really easy example, okay, without analyzing, all right, just when we walk in a room and we see a table there, the sort of automatic response or the like instinctive response we have to that is that the table exists in reality, that it is completely solid, and that it is permanent. All right. So the easiest one, as soon as we start to ask ourselves, well, does it exist in reality? Is it the way that it appears? Is it solid? Is it permanent? When we start to ask those questions, then the answer becomes very clear. All right. So the first thing that we consider that is really the easiest to consider in this case is it permanent? Is that table permanent? Well, no, right? It's not permanent. It's not permanent because eventually it will dissolve. Even a really like a steel table or a plastic table, eventually it will dissolve. So it's not permanent. We don't see that process because it would take a long time, right, for it to rot or become something else, right? But it's actually in that process, just like the human body is, in that process of decay, second by second by second, all right? Millisecond, nanosecond by nanosecond by nanosecond, everything is in the state of change. Everything is in the state of decay. All right. Another thing about impermanence is that we can destroy that table, right? It's impermanent in that sense. We can throw it in a fire. We can take an axe to it. We can drop a bomb on it. There's lots of things we can do to destroy it. Therefore, table is not permanent. So that's the first one we throw out the window. Okay. Table is not as it appears. Well, what does that mean? Okay. If just look at science, science proves that. Right? Table is not solid. The table is composed of molecules and atoms just whizzing around, right? It's in constant motion. We don't perceive that, but that is how it is. Then if you go deeper into something like quantum physics, then it talks about, well, this table is actually mostly space and light. And you're like, what? Because I can knock on my desk here and it doesn't feel solid. I mean, it doesn't feel, it feels solid. It looks permanent. I mean, if I put my mind of analysis on it, it's clear it's not solid, it's not permanent, right? But that's how I perceive it. Even knowing these teachings, that's how I perceive it, especially without analysis. Okay, what about the third one about it has no inherent reality? So I really like this one too. So if you start to take apart the table, right? You take one leg off the table. Is it still a table? Most of us would say, yeah, it's still a table. If you take two legs off the table, is it still a table? Now it becomes maybe a ramp, if you take two legs off on the same side, becomes, slanted like that, right? So now maybe you would call it a ramp. No, if you take the other two legs off the table, is it still a table? You can't say that's still a table. We just cannot say that's still a table. It's a kind of wood block. We talk about the let's say about a wooden table. It's a slab of wood and 4 poles. When those objects are put together in a certain way, we put the label on it of table. So when we relate to the table, we're not relating to the thing itself. We're actually relating to the label that we put on that. Okay? If you take those 5 objects, the block of wood and the 4, which you would probably call poles at that point. I don't know, maybe you'll call it something else. There's a word I'm thinking of. I can't remember. But anyway, you know what I mean. And let's say that you put the 4 poles. I'm looking for a word. I can't think of it. Like you have the slab on the floor. Okay. If we're going to call something a table, the poles have to go on these 4 corners, right? Or they could be gathered in the middle, really close together. And then you could, not with a planche though, with a round thing, maybe that would work. But let's say that you set them this way, maybe it's table, but it's a very low table. There's lots of different ways we could put that together, or you just put one or whatever. Okay. So it's not just that these 5 items make a table, but also how they're put together makes a table, a functional table, right? So again, it's really dependent phenomena. The table is dependent on the materials and on the order in which these things are placed for it to be functional, right? But it's also dependent on so many other things, yeah? Let's put that aside for 1 second and just to talk more about the parts, because we can say this table is made of 5 parts, the top and the 4 legs, okay? But each of those parts is also made of parts, yeah? The table is, let's say, if we continue to talk about the wooden table, it's made of wood, right? It has a top, a bottom, and 4 sides. That wood came from a tree, but it didn't just magically appear from a tree to our room as a table, right? It had to be cut down by lumberjacks. Those lumberjacks had to grow up, had to train in lumberjacking. I don't know what the word is, right? How to do this thing. Then the wood had to be sent to some place that would fashion it into the kind of wood that can be used for that. Then somebody had to make it, put it together. Then, it had to be shipped from there to the store. Then we had to buy it. Okay. But each one of those things is further, now we're back to interdependence. Each one of those things is further dependent on so many other things. Go back to the source of the wood, which is the tree. The tree has to grow to a certain size to be able to be useful for a size of wood for our big desk or a small desk or a table or what have you, okay? That, in order for that tree to grow, it needs to be protected from like deer that would eat it as a shoot. It needs to receive enough nutrients in the soil. It needs to have enough sun. It needs to have enough water. All of these things. Thich Nhat Hanh says in one of his books, it's so lovely when you're reading one of these books. I'm sorry, I can't remember. All his books are good. So he says, as you're reading this page, so you're reading a certain page, and he says, as you're reading this page, the sky and the sun and the clouds exist in this page. Okay. Why? Because those things, without those things, that page cannot be formed. Again, something that comes from wood, right? So where in all of that process, if we think about all of that process, same thing goes for the legs, same thing goes for the hinges, right? For the screwdrivers, for machine that, help to put this thing together. he says, I think he says there, like, also, you are the sandwich that the lumberjack ate at lunch, because without food, the lumberjack can't, continue to live. Without the lumberjack, the tree can't be cut down, on and on. Right? It reminds me of a story. You guys don't know this because I'm old now, but there was a story in this old storybook that my mom used to read to us out of that was like the pig who wanted to get over the sty and couldn't go over the sty. A sty is kind of like a low, like 2 steps that kind of go over these like stone walls that they used to have. And so it's kind of like the pig couldn't get over the sty without a stick. The stick couldn't hit the pig without the farmer. The farmer couldn't all the way back. Okay, so it's the same. We don't perceive that when we first look at a table. But if we contemplate how the table truly is, so again, notice I'm not saying it doesn't exist at all. This is a really important point because a lot of times people make that misunderstanding about Buddhism. Not make, but have that misunderstanding. They think Buddhism is nihilistic, that we say nothing exists. That's not what Buddhist teachings are at all right? Buddha said, things do not appear like we think. Everything is interdependent. This cannot exist without this. This cannot exist without this, and so forth. So when we see a table the first time, all these things, we make a lot of assumptions about it, right? But when we start to analyze it in the way that I just described, it falls apart, right? In our mind, like it just falls apart. Like there is no table in and of itself. There is no what they call inherently existent table. So the table has a set of causes and conditions that allows it to be. Each of those causes has another cause ad infinitum. All right. So when you look, so then you're sort of looking there, right? Sort of how things exist, in this case, in the physical world, right? Then it says, when you look into the nature of the subject that perceives them, which is the mind, right? So it's our mind that perceives these things. Those objects that appear to it, this is with practice, right? Once we perceive things like a reflection, like a mirage, like an echo, all of these 8 examples, right? When you look into the nature of the subject that perceives these things, the mind, those objects that appear to it do not stop appearing, but the concepts that take them as having any true existence subside. So it's not like when one realizes emptiness that the whole universe disappears and there's nothingness. Doesn't mean that, okay? Things appear as they did before, but our concepts about them as having true existence, as being inherently existent in and of themselves, that starts to subside. Okay? I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, please ask a question. I'll do my best to answer it. This is really a topic that would be wonderful to hear from a Lama, especially realized Lama. There are some books by the Dalai Lama and other masters on this, so I would look into that too. Anyways, to continue with this quote, to leave the mind in the realization of the nature of reality, what we just talked about, empty yet clear like the sky, is transcendent wisdom. Okay, so I'm going to read that again now that we've had a little bit of explanation about it, okay? So, quote, seeing all the objects of your perception in this way, like a dream and so forth, you come to understand that all these appearances are false by their very nature. When you look into the nature of the subject that perceives them, the mind, Those objects that appear to it do not stop appearing, but the concepts that take them as having any true existence subside. To leave the mind in the realization of the nature of reality, empty yet clear like the sky, is transcendent wisdom. So empty always means empty of inherent existence. It doesn't mean empty cup, empty room, like that. Okay? Inherent existence means like something that just exists without any causes and conditions, without depending on anything else. Like if you have going back to the example of a table, with this, if we think it has inherent existence, that means we think it just popped out of the sky. Just poof, there was the table, right? So we're saying that's not how things happen. Buddha's saying that's not how things happen, okay? So continuing on. Oh, this is my favorite thing. So, quote, even to wonder whether or not all things were empty by nature would make samsara fall apart. So samsara means, the definition of samsara is cyclic existence, okay? So cyclic existence is this round of birth and death and birth and death and birth and death that we've been on. It's so wearying since beginningless time. That's cyclic. We can talk more about that on another video. But anyway, so there's a footnote to that. Okay, so I'll read that again. Quote, even to wonder whether or not all things were empty by nature would make cyclic existence fall apart. Footnote, or samsara fall apart. Here, samsaric existence refers to anything that one believes to be real and to which one is attached, okay? To which one is attached. So this is when we talk about non-attachment in Buddhism, it doesn't mean, what's that word? Apathy, right? It doesn't mean, we just don't care about anything, whatever, everything is empty. It's not talking about that. That's not non-attachment. Non-attachment, it means not getting caught by perceiving things incorrectly, right? So not getting sort of trapped in this grasping at things as real. That's what that means in this case when we say non-attachment. All right. So the conclusion to this, meaning like talking about all 6 of these. Oh, you know what? Before I do that, I want to say something else that I forgot to say. I did say it at the beginning when I said none of these, the 5 preceding elements, generosity, discipline, and so forth, become transcendent, can be called transcendent or paramita or transcendent perfection, unless and until they are paired with the understanding of wisdom or the understanding of emptiness. If we don't have those 2 things coupled, they just become ordinary virtuous acts, which are not going to get us out of samsara. They're not going to get us out of cyclic existence. They're not going to lead to enlightenment. It's not that it's bad to do those things. It's wonderful to be generous and to have moral discipline and to be patient and all of that stuff. But it's just going to land us, without understanding the nature of reality, that's just going to land us in the God realm, which is not where we want to be. Okay? So how do we combine those things? That's a whole another subject. But essentially, I'll give you the example of generosity. And there's several examples of what generosity means, but let's say generosity of material things, excuse me. So let's say that I'm giving somebody a present, okay? If I just give somebody a present, that's generosity, all right? It's ordinary generosity. It's great, all right? But if I give someone a present, free from the concepts of subject, object, and action, that becomes transcendent generosity, all right? So free of concepts about myself as the giver means seeing the empty nature of myself, my body, my mind, of the object, the gift, and of the person to whom I'm giving, and the action of giving, the whole thing. If we can see that correctly, if we can see that as a dream, as a mirage, all of that, as empty of inherent nature, that becomes transcendent generosity. So, when I heard these teachings for many years, and it was always frustrating to me, actually, when I heard this teaching, because I was like, I cannot practice these 6 paramitas. I cannot practice these 5 things, right? Generosity, patience, with the view of emptiness, unless I've realized emptiness. Therefore, I can't even practice these things until I'm enlightened. That was my false understanding of this. And I was like, well, how do we even do this? So I asked Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche, one of our teachers, about that. And he said, it's not that you have to realize emptiness first, okay? It just means as you are doing these things, as you're interacting with the world, you try to do that from the perception of emptiness, okay? From the false perception that everything is real, has inherent existence, is solid, permanent, etc., etc. So it's in the trying, it's in the practicing of that practice. It's through practice, right? It's in trying to do that we eventually are able to do that. So we shouldn't just give up on trying this teaching, on trying to practice this particular teaching because we don't fully understand it or we haven't realized emptiness. We just try. Okay? All right. Now we go to the conclusion. So in these, in these points here from the text, we're talking about all 6 of these paramitas. Okay? So, quote, all the elements of the path are contained in the 6 transcendent perfections. So it's not just these 6, okay? It is all the elements of the path. All right. And there's a paragraph about that we don't have time now to read, but I love that very much. Okay, quote, to study, study, reflect, and meditate on the Dharma, therefore, without dissociating one from the other. So throughout the teachings, it's the same, like because of the way our mind works, because of the limits of language and so forth, things are delineated, right? One by one by one. But that doesn't mean but in reality, it's a whole, it's there, everything's meant to be like practiced together, right? So it's the same with the 6 paramitas. It's something that is a whole. It's not like, they just don't exist as separate parts. We have to try to practice all of that at the same time. Okay, so I'll read that again. Study, reflect, and meditate on the Dharma, therefore, without dissociating one from the other. Also without dissociating studying, reflection, and meditation, okay? On the firm basis of the love and compassion of bodhicitta. Without first eliminating doubts through study, you will never be able to practice. Then it goes on. Eliminating doubts through study does not mean that you have to know all the vast and innumerable subjects that are to be known. It would never be possible within a short lifetime. It means that whatever teachings you are going to put into practice, you should know exactly how to do so from beginning to end. Okay? Any hesitation or doubts you may have, you should clear away by reflecting on those teachings and asking questions. Okay? The result of study, reflection, and meditation should be a steady and real increase in the love and compassion of bodhicitta, together with a steady and real reduction of ego clinging, and negative emotions. All right, unquote. So now we're going to do the dedication prayers, and after that, there'll be some time for question and answers if anybody has any, okay? So if you don't, as I said in the beginning, if you don't already have them in front of you, there's links to everything in the description box below. All right. We're going to begin with the Parna Shawari prayer and mantra, which are meant to help against the pandemic. Okay. So we'll say this prayer once in English, once in Tibetan, and we'll say the mantra 3 times. Lady, Holy One. Oh, by the way, this is Parna Shawari is an emanation of Tara. Okay. Lady, Holy One, enlightened and compassionate, appear now as the leaf-clad goddess, healer of disease. Do not turn away, but in compassion, take myself and all the beings of this age of 5 generations. Perform your deeds of soothing, purging, cauterizing all the pains of illness, plagues, and pestilence. Now in Tibetan, Jetsun Chomden Dema Tuche Chen Ritru Loma Gyunme Kushen Shik Daso Nima Ngade Semchen La Tuche Yawa Madu Jesu Sun Nedim Yamne Gowe Nedunga Shido Shotu Sepe Trine So. Now say the mantra 3 times. Om Pishatsi Parna Shawari Sarwa Dzola Prasha Manaye Soha. Om Pishatsi Parna Shawari Sarwa Dzola Prasha Manaye Soha. Om Pishatsi Parna Shawari Sarwa Dzola Manaye Soha. All right, now we go to the closing prayers, beginning with the long life prayers. So these long life prayers are about asking the teachers to live a long time, and sort of making aspirations that they do so. These we are just gonna, the English is there, but these we just say in Tibetan. Our teacher, one of our teachers, Chukupema Wangyal Rinpoche, asks us to say prayers in Tibetan and also to understand what we're saying by making sure we read the translation. Because these prayers have been written by enlightened beings, they have been recited over and over again, and therefore the words themselves in the original language have power. All right, so that's why we do these in Tibetan. Okay, so let's begin. First, a long life prayer for the Dalai Lama. Kanri wawe kowe shinkam su pendande wa malu juene chenrezi wantin singyam soye shape gaba tu tengyo shik. Then Jigme Khensen Rinpoche. Om Swasti Chigme Rajam Seyo Chinlaki Kensei Duka Lunzen Nudancho Subsumishi Doje Taten Chin Tendrum Patrin Leta Shin Sho. Then Chukupema Wangyal Rinpoche. Om Swasti Tsela Gyamso Chinlab Tenjule Lunsin Takse Gyuchu Pema Wang Sangsum Nadre Gyalpo Tatene Labshan Tende Shaitan Tage Sho. Then this one is for like all the teachers. Lama Kunkam Sampo Sowadeb Chutu Kutse Mingwa Sowadeb Trine Tashin Gepa Sowadeb Lama Dandre Wa Me Pa Chingi Lo. Now the next page. So the first one we say once in English, once in Tibetan. The next 3 we say just in English, and then we say the 100-syllable mantra. By this merit, may all attain omniscience, may defeat the enemy wrongdoing. from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of cyclic existence, may I free all beings. Sonam di tamche sikpani, chone nye pedranam pamche shing, ke gana chi balon trupai, sipet sole droa sho. May bodhicitta, precious and sublime, arise where it has not yet come to be, and where it has arisen may it never fail but grow and flourish ever more and more. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain and dispel the miseries of the world, ever absorbed in the display of divine forms and primordial awareness, appearance, sound, and perception in the state of divinities, mantras, and dharmakaya. May I, inseparable from the practice of profound and secret great yoga, attain within the essence of mind the state of one taste. Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Tenopa Tishta Jito Me Bhava Sutokayo Me Bhava Supokayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sawasiddhi Me Prayatsa Sawakama Sutsa Me Chitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Sarvatata Gata Vajrama Me Munsa Vajri Bhava Maha Samaya Sarva. Okay, so now we have some time for question and answer. If you have a question, please put it in the chat. And please do so quickly because I don't just wait very long, okay? So let's see. Okay, I don't see any questions. So I want to thank you so much for joining me this morning. I really enjoy spending time with you like this. Please check out everything in the description box there. We are having a 2-day special practice around the election to cultivate peace and in our own heart and compassion and peace for others as well. That takes place this Tuesday and Wednesday from 12 to 1. All the details are on the site. Then this coming Saturday and Sunday, we have like a mini retreat on bodhicitta in action. So that's from 12:30 to 3:30 both days. Okay. And there's other stuff going on, which you can see in the newsletter too. If you're able to make a donation, we would really, really appreciate it. We're not at the center anymore, but we still have to pay the rent, which is currently $1,200 a month. No, more than that, because they raised the rent. I think something like $1,350, $1,400 a month. We have to pay utilities, salaries, supplies, internet costs, all kinds of things. Okay, so if you can, any donation, no matter how small, no matter how large, is so needed and appreciated, and really creates a tremendous amount of merit also. So there's a link for donating below if possible. Okay. All right. So I hope to see you guys soon. Thanks again for joining me here today. Bye-bye. See you later.